I found this old cabinet door in the dump in the wood pile. It still has the original hinges on it. It has so much character, but I needed to brighten it up a little bit. Painted it with some of my white homemade chalk paint distressed around the edges, and I'm going to put on a graphic using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. I printed off this graphic on my laserjet printer, making sure to reverse it, and I'm applying a light coat of the Mod Podge completely over the graphic. Once I have it covered, I'm going to apply it, let it sit for 24 hours, and then take a damp rag with a little bit of water and rub the paper off, and that graphic is going to stay on my project. I wanted to add a pop of color, so I got out my acrylic paint and I'm just dry brushing on top of those letters using a Kleenex to wipe away any extra paint. I think it just perks it up a little bit. Added some color to the tree and to the car, and I've taken a cabinet door that I found in the dump and turned it into a beautiful piece of Christmas home decor. Today I'm creating some Christmas signs on some scrap wood that I had. I painted them nice and chippy and I added my Mod Podge graphics. These are so easy to make. You just have to print them off on your printer, on regular computer paper. Make sure if you're using words, you've got to reverse the text. Use some Mod Podge mat, place them on your sign, let it sit for 24 hours. After that, take a little rag with a little bit of water, just dampen it so you can just start to see the graphics, rub off the paper, and you've created a gorgeous sign. You don't need a Cricut, you don't need stencils. All you need is a printer and some Mod Podge. Do you have a friend or a family member who's lost a loved one throughout the year and you're trying to find the perfect gift for them? I think this is a fantastic DIY that they would love. We're going to print on some tissue paper. I picked up this snowflake tissue paper at the dollar store, taped it onto a piece of computer paper, put it through my printer, and printed on a quote that's going to fit on the candle. And then we're going to cut that tissue paper to fit around that candle. Get out some wax paper. We're going to put that tissue paper exactly where we want it on the candle, roll it up in that wax paper, making sure the waxy side is on the inside, heat it up with the hairdryer. The wax is going to melt into the tissue paper and you're left with a beautiful candle for a lost loved one. Have you ever found a pretty napkin and you thought that would be so nice to turn that into a greeting card? I'm going to show you how you can do that today. You're going to take your napkin down to 1 ply, and then I've got a piece of computer paper. I've folded it in half to the size of the greeting card that I want, and then I'm going to cut off the extra napkin. Now I have a little bit of a crease in it, so I'm going to put some parchment paper over top and iron it to get that crease out. Once that's finished, we are going to get cling wrap. Cut a piece a little bit bigger than that piece of paper and lay it down so it's nice and flat. You don't want any wrinkles or bubbles in it, and cut around the extra so you don't have any off the sides. Now you're going to lay your napkin on top of that cling wrap and paper and iron it with some parchment paper, and the cling wrap's going to melt that napkin onto the piece of paper and you're going to create a beautiful greeting card. I'm just going to trim around the edges and we're ready to put this card together with this beautiful little napkin. I found this mug at the thrift store and I knew I wanted to upcycle it. Found some graphics on my Cricut. I cut them, weeded it, put some transfer tape on them so I could put it on the mug. This is a simple way to take something that's old and dated and upcycle it into something pretty again. I love these wooden cutouts, but they're really hard to decoupage. I'm going to show you a hack using some napkins and a lighter, and it's going to make your life so much easier when you're decoupaging these and getting into those little intricate little spots. Apply your Mod Podge and then use 1 ply of a napkin and push it down on those wooden letters. While it's still wet, what you want to do is cut off all of the extra. Work quickly because we don't want that Mod Podge to dry, and get your lighter out. Set it on fire, and how mesmerizing is this? It goes in between all those little nooks and crannies in those cutouts, and you have a piece that's perfectly decoupaged. I think this is such a wonderful hack and it works great to do some DIYs for your Christmas decor. And once you've burned all the napkin away, you can seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer. I'm going to show you how you can make a wonderful Christmas gift just with a piece of scrap wood. I printed this graphic off on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the graphic, and applied some Mod Podge, put it on the piece of wood that I'd painted with some chalk paint, and let it sit for 24 hours. After the 24 hours, I dampened it with a little bit of water, rubbed off the paper, and that graphic is going to stay on that scrap piece of wood. I wanted to add a pop of color, so I got out some acrylic paint and I just highlighted those Christmas trees on the graphic. And this is what I created, a beautiful sign that makes a perfect gift from a scrap piece of wood. Do you remember when your grandma had decorative soap in her bathroom that was always so pretty? I'm going to show you today how you can make your own. It'll be a little bit of a flashback. And yes, you can use this after you put this napkin on the soap. I've got 1 ply of a Christmas napkin and I'm cutting it to size to fit my bar of soap. And then I'm going to get out my Mod Podge mat and I'm going to put a really liberal coat on the front of that bar of soap and then lay the napkin in top of it. And then I'm going to put another coat on top of that napkin. Once it's dry, I'm going to trim around the edges and we're going to add 3 or 4 more coats of that Mod Podge to the napkin. Once it completely dries, you can display it in your bathroom and you can either use it as a decor soap or it'll suds up from underneath and it'll just get smaller and smaller like a little sliver, leaving that decorative napkin on the top. This is a really fun DIY that brings back lots of memories for me because my grandma always had these in her bathroom. Give this technique a try. I found this Jack and Jill magazine at the thrift store. It's from December 1954, and when I picked it up, it felt kind of thick. And once I started opening up the pages, I found all these fantastic cutouts. Somebody has spent hours and hours cutting out all these little pieces of clothing and cutouts of people and dresses. It's just gorgeous, and they're all tucked away in between each one of these pages. What a thing to find, and I was so excited, and it was $1.99. It's going to be fantastic to use in my junk journaling. Also, if you have any other ideas that I could do with some of these little pieces to display them, or what I can upcycle them into, I'd love to know down in the comments. Give me some inspiration. Do you have all kinds of wooden cutouts from the dollar store? I'm going to show you how you can turn them into adorable Christmas ornaments with some cling wrap and a napkin. I painted the wooden cutouts with some acrylic paint, let them dry, and now I'm getting some cling wrap. I'm cutting it a little bit bigger than the wooden cutouts, picked out a pattern out of a favorite napkin of mine, making sure that it was only 1 ply of the napkin, and then we're going to place that napkin on top of the cling wrap, and then we're going to iron it. I've got some parchment paper and my iron on the highest setting, no steam, and we're going to melt that cling wrap into that wooden cutout and then just sand around the edges, and we've created really cute Christmas ornaments in a matter of minutes that are adorable. Make some extra spending money over the Christmas holidays, then save all those scrap pieces of wood and turn them into shelf sitters. I've painted this scrap piece of wood with some black chalk paint, and then I put on some white chalk paint and I distressed around the edges, and then I printed off a graphic on my laser jet printer. If you do this process, make sure to reverse your graphic or it will be backwards when you apply it. I put on some Mod Podge, let it sit for 24 hours, and then I took a little rag with a little bit of water and dampened that graphic, and then I rubbed off all of the paper. You're going to be left with a beautiful graphic on this scrap piece of wood, and they sell fantastic over the holidays. If you haven't tried this method, give it a try. I've got a scrap piece of wood that I painted with some black chalk paint and then some white chalk paint, and then I distressed it around the edges. I printed off this graphic on my laserjet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and I used some Mod Podge to apply it to the wood. I let it sit for 24 hours after I firmly pressed it down on that piece of wood, and then I took a rag with a little bit of water on it, dampened the graphics until I just could see them show through, rubbed off the paper, and we're left with a fantastic graphic on a piece of scrap wood. Perfect for your Christmas decor. Looking for a last-minute, affordable DIY that you can do for Christmas? Look no further than your scrap wood pile. I love making little shelf sitters with my scrap wood, and most of the time I have found the wood for free. I turn them into signs. I've painted this one with some black chalk paint and then some white chalk paint. I distressed around the edges, printed off a graphic on my laserjet printer, put on some Mod Podge, let it sit for 24 hours. After the 24 hours, I dampened it with a little bit of water, rubbed off the paper, and we're going to be left with a beautiful graphic on a scrap piece of wood. These are great last-minute Christmas gifts that are affordable. Tuck it in a stocking or in a gift, and you're good to go. Did you know that you can make signs with Mod Podge? I've printed this graphic off on just a regular piece of computer paper, reversing the text on my laserjet printer. I add a little bit of Mod Podge, place it on my project, and let it dry for 24 hours. Once it's dry, I take a little rag with a little bit of water and then rub the paper off, and the graphics are going to stay on your project. This is such a cool technique and a great way to create some Christmas signs for gifts. Did you know that you can transfer graphics using Mod Podge? I've got a scrap piece of wood that I painted with some chalk paint, and I printed off some graphics on my laserjet printer on regular computer paper, making sure to reverse the text. Add a little bit of Mod Podge onto the paper and then put it down on your piece of wood. Set it aside and let it dry for 24 hours. And then take a rag with a little bit of water and dampen it, and then rub all the paper off, and just like magic, you're gonna have those graphics stay on that piece of wood. A great way to create Christmas signs. I never throw any scrap pieces of wood because these are just scrap pieces of MDF, and I'm going to show you how you can turn them into really cute gift tags. I had some old wrapping paper that I found at the thrift store, and I'm just cutting out some images to fit that MDF that I've painted with some white chalk paint. I'm just cutting it a little bit bigger than the piece of wood, and we're going to use our Mod Podge mat and decoupage it onto that piece of wood. Then we're going to get that gift wrap paper and put it exactly where we want it. Make sure there's no bubbles and wrinkles. When it's completely dry, we're going to seal it up with some polyacrylic sealer, put a hole in the top, and add some twine and some beads, and we've created some really cute from some scrap wood.